Imagine standing in the burning Egyptian desert 5,000 years ago. No cranes, no engines, no electricity. Yet in front of you rises a mountain of stone taller than a modern skyscraper, built with blocks heavier than trucks. So the real question is, how did ancient humans do this? And what if I told you the answer is far more shocking than they just dragged stones? Most people think the pyramids were built by slaves using brute force, but that's a myth. These were skilled workers, engineers and planners who understood physics long before it had a name, using sledges on wet sand to reduce friction, carving stones with copper tools, and aligning the structures with stars so perfectly that even modern machines struggle to match their precision. But here's the twist. Some blocks came from quarries hundreds of kilometers away, transported across the Nile without engines and stacked with millimeter accuracy, which means these people didn't just have strength, they had genius-level planning. And just when you think you've understood it, another mystery appears. How did they lift stones weighing up to 80 tons to such heights without cranes, ramps, spirals, internal tunnels? Even today, experts still debate it, yet the biggest shock comes at the end. The pyramids weren't just tombs. They were symbols of power, knowledge, and cosmic order, aligned with the stars to help pharaohs travel to the afterlife. Meaning these weren't just buildings, they were messages to the universe, telling future generations, including us, that ancient humans were far more advanced than we ever imagined. And if they could build wonders without machines, what limits are really holding us back today? 5,000 years ago, in a world without steel, electricity, or engines, the ancient Egyptians were already thinking like master engineers, and the deeper you go into their story, the more unbelievable it becomes, because building the pyramids was not just about stacking stones, it was about controlling nature itself, starting with the Nile River, which acted like a natural highway, allowing massive limestone and granite blocks to float on wooden barges from distant quarries to the construction sites. And here's the twist most people don't realize. These journeys were timed with the river's annual floods, so the water would rise high enough to bring the stones right to the desert edge, saving enormous effort. And once the blocks arrived, workers used carefully designed sledges, pulling them across sand that was deliberately soaked with water to reduce friction. A simple trick that modern physics later confirmed, proving these builders understood natural laws through experience. Not textbooks, but transportation was only the beginning, because lifting those stones was the real nightmare. And this is where the mystery deepens, as no giant ramps have ever been found, yet the pyramids stand tall, which has led researchers to believe the ramps were temporary, possibly made of mud brick and sand, dismantled after construction, or even built inside the pyramid itself, hidden forever within the stone. And imagine the coordination required for this. Thousands of workers moving in perfect rhythm, guided by supervisors, using ropes, levers, and wooden frames. Not brute force alone, but smart force. And here comes another surprising truth. These workers were not slaves, they were paid laborers, fed with bread, beer, onions, and meat, living in organized camps with medical care, broken bones treated by ancient doctors, meaning this was a national project, a massive operation powered by pride, skill, and belief. And what belief was that? The belief that the pharaoh was not just a king, but a god on earth, whose journey to the afterlife had to be perfect, because if his soul reached the stars safely, Egypt itself would remain in harmony. And that's why the pyramids were aligned with incredible precision to the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, using only the stars and shadows, without compasses or GPS, yet achieving accuracy that still amazes modern surveyors. And just when you think the story can't get more impressive, another layer unfolds, because inside the pyramids, the chambers and passages were designed to protect the pharaoh's body and treasures, with hidden shafts, false doors, and massive granite plugs, some weighing more than cars, slid into place to block intruders forever. But even with all these defenses, most pyramids were eventually robbed, leaving behind one final mystery. If the gold was stolen, what remains? The answer is the knowledge itself, the silent proof carved into stone that ancient humans were capable of organizing massive projects, mastering materials, and shaping their environment on a scale we often underestimate. And the real shock comes when we realize this wasn't done by magic, aliens, or lost technology, but by human minds working together, learning from mistakes and pushing the limits of what was possible. Meaning the pyramids are not just monuments of the past, they are mirrors held up to us today, asking a powerful question: if people with no machines could build wonders that still stand after 5,000 years, What incredible things could we achieve if we used our own knowledge, unity, and imagination to their full potential? As the sun rises over the Giza plateau and its golden light touches the ancient stones, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. These pyramids were not accidents of history, they were the result of generations of learning, experimentation, and relentless ambition. Because long before the Great Pyramid was ever built, the Egyptians tried and failed many times, starting with simple mastaba tombs, then the step pyramid of Giza, which looked more like a giant staircase than the smooth-sided giants we know today. And each failure taught them something new about weight, balance, and structure, slowly turning mistakes into mastery. And this is where the story becomes even more fascinating because the builders didn't just rely on strength, they IED on mathematics, geometry, and an almost spiritual connection to the universe, carefully calculating angles so the pyramid's sides would rise at the perfect slope, strong enough to carry millions of tons of stone without collapsing. And here's the twist. The Great Pyramid's design contains mathematical relationships that still shock modern engineers, including proportions linked to pi and the golden ratio, suggesting that these ancient planners understood complex geometry in practical, hands-on ways, not through equations, but through experience, tradition, and observation. And while the world often focuses on how the stones were moved, the real miracle may be how the entire project was managed. Because imagine coordinating tens of thousands of workers without phones, radios, or digital maps. Yet somehow every block arrived in the right place at the right time, food was distributed, tools were maintained, and progress never stopped, all powered by a strict hierarchy of foremen, scribes, and architects who tracked everything with ink on papyrus, proving that information, not just muscle, built the pyramids, and as the structure rose higher, so did the danger. Because one wrong move could mean disaster. Yet archaeological evidence shows surprisingly few fatal accidents, suggesting safety measures, teamwork, and skilled craftsmanship were taken seriously. And this wasn't just construction, it was ceremony, because every stone placed was part of a sacred mission, believed to help the pharaoh's soul climb toward the heavens, which is why the internal shafts of the Great Pyramid point towards specific stars, especially those linked to the god Osiris, ruler of the afterlife, turning the pyramid into a cosmic ladder for the king's spirit. And now comes the emotional core of the story. Because while the pharaoh's name was meant to last forever, the names of the workers were mostly forgotten, yet their fingerprints remain in the stones, their graffiti still visible in hidden chambers, showing pride, humor, and brotherhood, reminding us that real people, with dreams and struggles, built these wonders, not faceless figures from textbooks. And the final reveal is this. The pyramids were not just built to impress the gods, they were built to unite a civilization, giving Egypt a shared purpose, identity, and sense of destiny. And that unity, more than any tool or technique, was the true machine behind the pyramids, because when people believe in something bigger than themselves, they can move mountains, or in this case turn them into monuments that still whisper their secrets to the world, asking us one last powerful question. If ancient humans could achieve immortality through stone, what legacy are we building for the future? Thousands of years have passed since the last stone was placed on the Great Pyramid, yet its shadow still stretches across history, challenging everything we think we know about ancient civilizations, because the more scientists study these monuments, the more questions appear. And one of the biggest mysteries is how the builders achieved such unbelievable precision without modern tools, since the base of the Great Pyramid is level to within just a few centimeters across an area larger than several football fields, something that even today would require advanced surveying equipment, and yet the Egyptians managed it using nothing more than water channels, plumb lines, and simple measuring rods, showing that intelligence does not depend on technology, but on understanding. And here's where the story takes another unexpected turn, because the stones themselves tell a tale of planning on a massive scale, with limestone blocks carefully cut and shaped so tightly that not even a blade can fit between them, while the inner granite blocks, some weighing over 60 tons, were transported from Aswan, nearly 800 kilometers away, across deserts and rivers, without wheels or engines, which means the entire supply chain was a miracle of ancient logistics, coordinated by scribes who tracked every delivery, every worker, and every resource, proving that paperwork, not power, was the real backbone of the pyramids. And as archaeologists dig deeper, they continue to uncover workers' villages, bakeries, breweries, and medical stations, revealing a thriving construction city that supported thousands of laborers, where injured workers received treatment, meals were distributed daily, and morale was kept high through teamwork and purpose, destroying the old myth of brutal slave labor and replacing it with the image of a proud workforce building something they believed would last forever. And the emotional weight of this becomes even stronger when we realize that many of these workers left behind carvings and writings calling themselves friends of Khufu or drunkards of Menkaure, showing humor, identity, and human spirit hidden inside stone, reminding us that history is not just made of kings and gods, but of ordinary people whose hands shaped extraordinary things. And then comes the deeper mystery, because the pyramids were not built alone. They were part of a much larger sacred landscape, surrounded by temples, causeways, and burial sites, all aligned with the movement of the sun, the stars, and the Nile, turning the entire area into a giant spiritual map of the Egyptian universe, where life, death, and rebirth were connected through architecture. And this cosmic design suggests that the pyramids were not just tombs, but gateways between worlds, places where the earthly and the divine were meant to meet. And here's the final twist that leaves historians in awe. Despite earthquakes, sandstorms, wars, and thousands of years of erosion, these structures still stand, outlasting empires, religions, and even the civilizations that built them, proving that when humans build with purpose, unity, and vision, they can create something stronger than time itself. And the real lesson of the pyramids is not due how they were built, but why, because they were symbols of belief, identity, and ambition, showing that when a society shares a powerful goal, it can achieve the impossible. And as we look up at these ancient giants today, we are not just seeing stones stacked on stones, we are seeing the frozen heartbeat of a civilization that refused to be forgotten, leaving us with one haunting question that echoes through the ages. If people with no machines could build monuments that still inspire the world after 5,000 years, what kind of legacy will we leave behind? Even after everything we think we know about the pyramids, their greatest power is not in the stones themselves, but in the feeling they create. Because when you stand before them, you are not just looking at ancient architecture, you are facing the ambition of an entire civilization that refused to accept limits. And what makes this even more powerful is the fact that these monuments were built for eternity in a world where life was fragile, where floods, disease, and war were constant threats. Yet the Egyptians chose to invest their energy into something that would outlive them, believing that through stone, memory could become immortal. And this mindset is what truly separates the pyramids from every other structure in history, because they were not built for comfort, profit, or speed. They were built for meaning. And here's the twist that changes everything. The pyramids were not the end of Egyptian engineering. They were the peak of a long tradition, followed by temples, obelisks, and cities that continued to reflect the same cosmic order, showing that the knowledge used to build them was not a one-time miracle, but a system passed down through generations, refined by experience, protected by tradition, and respected as sacred wisdom. And yet, over time, that knowledge faded, not because it was weak, but because the world changed. Empires rose and fell, languages were lost, and what remained were silent stones that kept their secrets locked inside, forcing modern scientists to become detectives of the past, measuring angles, studying tool marks, and decoding ancient texts just to understand what once came naturally to the builders. And the deeper researchers go, the more they realize that the pyramids were not built by extraordinary individuals, but by ordinary people organized in extraordinary ways. Farmers who worked during the flood season, craftsmen who shaped each block, engineers who designed the structure, and scribes who recorded every detail, all united by a shared belief in something greater than themselves. And this unity is the real engine behind the pyramids, stronger than any machine, because when thousands of minds move in the same direction, even mountains can be reshaped. And here comes the emotional core of the story, because while the pharaoh's name was carved in stone, the workers' stories were carved in effort, sweat, and sacrifice, yet their legacy still lives in Eve. Rai perfectly placed block, in every smooth surface, in every shadow cast by the pyramid at sunset, reminding us that greatness is not built by glory alone, but by dedication. And the final reveal is this: the pyramids were never meant to be fully understood. They were meant to be felt, to inspire awe, to challenge the future, to stand as a message across time that says, We were here, we believed, and we built. And as we stand in the modern world, surrounded by technology, speed, and endless information, the pyramids quietly ask us a powerful question without speaking a single word. If people with no machines, no electricity, and no modern tools could create something that still commands respect after 5,000 years, then what excuse do we have for not building something meaningful of our own?